Out from the center of a star's black hole, there's a key vibrational sound that opens a path or envelope in which worlds of souls form. This sound envelope is the tashish, the becomer. Within the tashish, the star sun does not resemble a sphere, but a torus or donut shape, with the black hole of the star at the center and the worlds existing within the torus. Venus and Earth were once one world as they nested within the vibratory torus of the star Rigel in Orion. They divided like a cell so that Venus and Earth created a divine geometry with one another that could not have become otherwise. Through a cosmic event, they were transferred through a wormhole into the star sun of this solar system. Eventually, they formed into a planet to nest within the native worlds of our solar system. Together, they form a heart geometry of beauty, Earth, and love, Venus. On June 10th, 2012, Thothic speaks through me to a gathering in the 11th heaven pyramid above the New Earth Star Island within the virtual world of Second Life. To better understand the relationship between Earth and Venus, let us go back into time when the two worlds were as one in the star sun of Rigel within the constellation of Orion. Among the worlds of Rigel was also a world we shall call Atlantis. This world had some karmic difficulties and as a result self-destructed. The destruction of this Atlantis also caused a major imbalance in the worlds of Rigel. There was an energy grid imbalance, you might say, to use simple terminology. Thus, Earth and Venus carried the seed codes of Rigel to a new space and time. And there on Earth, many souls from that other Atlantis would later reincarnate on the islands of Atlantis. The Earth and Venus hold a balance for Rigel here in this point of space-time within the Milky Way galaxy. This balance is maintained to hold the vault of Orion, a large area in space within that constellation, open energetically as a portal between universes. There is much more to all of this, too much to relate here, but Orion is a doorway in this universal membrane to other universes. Earth and Venus hold a balance for Rigel and the vault of Orion to hold open this passage. Now, a note from me in the current time of 2024, later I would come to understand that within the trapezium of Orion Nebula is where the hologram for this universe was radiated forth. Now we continue with Thoth. In entering this point of space-time, these worlds now occupy, they are in a world system 1, having come from a world system 2 in Orion. Thus they must deal more directly with certain cosmic events so that they are literally sent into the machinery to find the cogs and wheels and keep these in alignment for the movement back into world system 2. Now, I would like to just pause for a moment here in 2024 and address why a world system 2 would have a planet exploding. Well, very briefly, Thoth states that it didn't stay in that frequency. That particular planet started sliding, you might say. And as it did, there was a confliction between World System 1, World System 2, as it was kind of vibrating back into that half frequency. And that's what basically caused it to explode. There were other aspects of it all, of that story, but that is why it could explode and still be sort of in a world system 2. And it could affect the other planets in the world system 2. Being in a world system 2 is not like, oh, I've arrived, so this is it, and that's all there is to it. You have to maintain it. You have to maintain the garden. So now, back to Thoth and his transmission. The purpose? By leaving Orion and going into the machinery, they are able to correct certain imbalances in the whole system, or rather be a vessel for this function. The specific point where Earth is now, moving around its sun, and the galaxy and the Milky Way, and the Milky Way in the universe, this is a clockwork, a very specific formation, as all is, of course, but in this case, it is one that will fine-tune the system of this entire universe. When he says, as all is, of course, he simply means that there's a unified field ultimately if you move out of space-time. But we're operating in space-time for a reason, and that is to bring it into a confluent vibration that we can perpetuate in these evolutionary stages from a world system 1 to a world system 2. And not just for our planet. Remember, we have to go back to the tear and the Eye of Ra and all of that goes on in this picture. If you're new to this, I simply can't go back and explain that, but I have videos on it. To continue with Thoth. In a way, the early beliefs were somewhat correct, that the Earth was the center of the universe, as it holds a very key balance point for the maintenance of this universe, and Venus is its guardian and guide. Also, one could say that every world is the center of its universe in the context of quantum reality. The Venusians are very close human relations, only more advanced genetically and energetically. They are still in World System 1, however, so they live and finally die, reincarnate, etc. However, they live much longer, several thousand years by your time, and even at death have appeared to age very little. This is like the inhabitants of the Earth's inner hollow civilizations. Both Venus and Earth's inner world are on the high spectrum of a World System 1. They do not die of illness, but can by accidents and simply the running down of the bioclock. On Earth, it is presumed that if there were not illness, barring accidents, one could live forever. This is not so. In order to have an immortal body, one must stop the clock at the level of the neutron in the atom. On other dimensions, this is quite possible. Even in World System 2, there is an end time for the body. However, it does not decay and is not left behind. All the energy is taken at the time of transition and can return in a next level vibration quickly if desired. No birth or childhood is necessary. To return to Venus, they give birth, grow up very quickly, and finally transition, leaving a body behind, yet they have a means of disposal that is to transform the remains into energy. Again, this holds true also for the slightly removed dimension of the hollow of our inner Earth. The Venusians are not as racially varied as on Earth. They have not chosen that experimentation simply because they are beyond needing to learn about racial equality and are focused elsewhere. Humans need the experience of diverse outer forms. Venusians have other areas of focus. So most Venusians are fair with blonde red to deep red hair and light eyes. This is not a preferred racial picture. It just happens to be the one they are working within. In one of the Rigelian worlds, almost all the skin tones are a deep blue-black. Within the hollow earth, there are varied races, as they are indeed the people of the ark, containing the seed genetics of all races for the entire human species. They will deliver the full spectrum of these genetics back to the surface world at the appropriate time. Venusians have a very sing-song voice, very crystal in sound. Were one to be among you now and speak, you would know it was not of this world, but if they spoke your language, you would be able to understand them. In fact, there are pure Venusians among you here on earth, but they have learned to modify their voices. There are many humans who have some Venusian blood. Most are not aware that they do. Venusians come here on Earth to serve in the greater process for which Earth and Venus were placed in this solar system. All Venusians are aware of this. In fact, they are aware of the true cosmic history of this universe. As previously stated, many humans carry at least some Venusian blood. This comes from the early days of Mu, when the Venusian consort Melchizedek, Thoth's incarnation, came to Earth with certain priestesses to create a grand temple on Mu. From this developed the mixing of genetics. In other eras, of course, this has taken place as well. There are other star genetics into the mix on Earth to be sure, but the Venusian is the most prevalent. There are many stories and many things misunderstood about the topic of beings here from other worlds. Earth humans, however, are amazing creatures. They have a great mixture of Earth and star races, far more than on many worlds. Diversity brings a great capacity for oneness, once certain challenges are overcome. This is the end of the Thoth transmission. In the late 1960s, I received that Earth and Venus did not originate in this solar system or even in this galaxy, but instead had been teleported from inside the star-sun Rigel in the constellation of Orion to its current position around the sun in this galaxy and solar system. This seemed so fantastic at the time that back then I rarely spoke or wrote about it. However, in 2005, I read Cracking the Bible Code by Jeffrey Statinover, MD. In this book, Dr. Statinover is writing about quantum physics when he states, and I quote, "There is a genuine probability that the entire Earth will suddenly jump its current orbit around the sun to another star." End of quotes. In recent years, quantum physics has also proven in a laboratory that two objects can occupy the same space at the same time. I am now going off script for just a moment to tell you a very true story. In, I believe it would have been 1976, Thoth informed me, actually I'm going to say the star kindred informed me, because I did not have direct communication with Thoth until 1977, but it was all coming through that streaming anyway. However, the star kindred informed me that my great-grandmother on my father's side had been a Venusian, a full-blooded Venusian. And that my friend, Denise, her father, had been a full-blooded Venusian. Now, of course, we want to take a look at this and go, oh yeah, really? How many times have we heard this in the New Age community? Things like that, you know? And I'm going, I don't know about this. I don't want to go off the deep end here. I'm always trying to keep myself from going off the deep end. So at the time I was like, oh, I don't even want to hear this. But yet it was very intriguing, I have to admit. So when I mentioned it to my mother about my great-grandmother on my father's side, and of course my father was then deceased, and there were no relatives in that ballpark, she said that he had told her that his mother had told him that there was a great family secret that they would never share with him. Well, why did she say that much, you know? Well, that could have been anything. Okay, so, but we'll just hang that on the wall for a moment. Now, I do know that my paternal grandfather was an orphan, and he ran away from the orphanage, he said with a brother, but no one ever believed him. I did. And that the orphanage burned down, so all the records were gone of the children, you know. But he also said that his mother had red hair. In later years, Thoth shared with me that the red hair gene is from the Venutian genetic strain. Now, there are other beings that came to Earth, the dystopians, or I can't pronounce the name, I should have never tried, that had the red hair gene. It comes from the same familial genetic strain. But predominantly, the red hair gene is Venutian. Now, you could be any race on the planet and still have that gene in your body. It just doesn't show up as red hair. But, you know, I'm just saying that his mother had red hair. So I go to Denise. Now, I was in Hawaii at the time, living on Oahu for 6 months, and she was not there. She was back in Texas. So I write to her, because I don't know anything about Denise's family, other than they lived in East Texas, and they were very fundamentalist. And she had this young nephew she adored, and there's a whole story around that. But I didn't know anything about her family otherwise. I just know she's in the metaphysical stream, and we share those things together. I wrote to Denise, and I told her what I received. And she wrote me back and said the following. Now, I'm not quoting from a letter. I wish I had the letter, but I am paraphrasing it here. She stated that her father was much older than her mother, and he had been married before. And he never talked about that marriage, and he had some children by that marriage, and he never really spoke about them either. In fact, he never spoke about his life at all. I mean, just little glimpses. He was a very mysterious character. He came into their life, and he left from their life, and they never saw him again. Now, there is one other thing that the kindred told me at the time, before I wrote to Denise, and they said that her father had a brain injury, so he only partly sort of remembered some things from his Venusian past. This brain injury he received when his starship crashed to Earth. I don't know if there were other beings aboard or he was the only one, but obviously he wandered off from the incident and really had very little memory of anything of his past. Okay, so when I told Denise that, she told me that her father had some kind of difficulty with his thinking, and he had a speech impediment because of it. So that certainly seemed to fit the bill. Now, to take it further, she said that she remembered as a child, and this is after apparently the father had left, that she remembers like being about 4 years old and playing out in her backyard in East Texas and looking up at the sky and seeing this unusual thing in the sky, like a UFO. You know, now you would call it that, but then she just said this sort of shiny, silvery thing that was just sort of hanging in the sky. And she was fascinated. She's 4, she's looking up like, wow, what's that? And her mother comes rushing out of the house and grabs her and says, they can't have you. They can't have you. And she rushed her into the house and put her in the closet. And she had to stay in there a while until her mother finally let her out. So, you can make of that what you will, but it's a very interesting development. And I share it, even though it's a private experience, because I just want to demonstrate to you some of these things that I'm sharing here that seem so far out. Many times they have, I'm not going to use the word proven because that's a big term, but they have been backed up by some very physical things that have come out of that picture to me. And this is one of them. So now, let us continue. I want to share briefly on the temples of Venus. I have a recent Substack on the temples of Venus, so I will place that link in the information box below, along with some other links concerning things I've referenced here. So I'm not going to go into it, but I just want to say this much, that the temples of Venus connect to the vibratory frequency of Venus, and they are guardianed by the divine feminine through, or let's say connected to, Mary Magdalene. There's a big story about that. You can read it on Substack, and you can also see it on my Magdalene, about the Magdalene video. I will place that in the link below, in the box below as well. Now, what I didn't say in that Substack article is that there's an 8th Venus temple, and that node is in Numis Om. Thoth showed me the 8th Venus temple node in Numis Om, the first stage of the new Earth, which had formed energetically from the Cruxus Venus pillar of light. As he has previously made me aware, for every Venus temple node in the current Earth, there is a correspondent one in the new Earth of Numis Om. However, this 8th temple is only in Numis Om, at least for now. It is a central point, or still point, which anchors all the other Venus temple nodes in both realities through the Cruxus pillar of light. For this reason, he is calling this 8th temple the Cruxus Venus temple. And now I would like to briefly speak about the Hesperus Ascara and the Venus node in the dolphin's brains. The Hesperus Ascara are the dolphins that contain an overlighting from the Venus beings. Most of these are within the hollow Earth. The holographic brains of the cetaceans contain what could be called a Venus node in their brain. This node is like a crystal radio that sends and receives signals from the Venutian magnetic influence and in turn helps to guide it to the center of the Earth. The Hesperus Ascara are in the inner Earth, and they have the overlighting directly connecting them to the Venutian beings. Probably the next video I'm going to be doing will be on geochronism, but as it relates to Venus, I wanted to just include a little bit on it here and now. Geochronism is a Thoth term. It is not the same as geochronology, which you can find on the web, having to do with the determining age of rocks, etc. Thoth gave me this term in the 1970s. It is, as he defines it, the entrainment of Earth and its life inhabitants to the universal condition of change, creating new states of reality and resultant advanced modes of energy conductivity. Life is the vehicle for the infinite progression of realities necessary in order for the planet to keep in unitrainment. The degree of advancement along the time helix determines its phase lock on the geochronic scale. When we view, for instance, the planet Venus via our phase lock, which is not changed by our form of space travel, we take it with us, we see the Venusian sphere out of geochronomatic sync with Earth. We perceive it then through an altered state, one which has been determined by our geochronism. Our light, space, gravity, time spectras are not at a proper dimensional angle to synchronize perspective balance between the two worlds. The zenith of the Venutian reality is removed from us when approached through our limited programming. In other words, the gaseous sphere that we see and land our little remote craft on, and it just disintegrates in a few minutes or something because it's so hot there. All of that, that's not the Venus we're talking about. We're talking about the true core dimension of Venus, which is very much like our core dimension of Earth that we're living on right now. The Venus Quetzal Cross. This is a galactic merging of four principal powers at the center of each galaxy, forming a meeting in the energy bodies at the solar plexus of the human awakened being. The Venus Quetzal Cross is the entry of the powers of this cross into our solar system through the living lights of Venus, the guardian planet of Earth. There are three gateways of illumination necessary in order for humanity to achieve union with the cross. These gateways are symbolically represented by the virtues of honor, humility, and selflessness. Divine Heart, hold me at thy living breast. Divine Sun, illumine my solar center and transfix me upon the cross of completion, that I may know I am at one with the all. And so it is, and so I am.